Hello everyone. For the past few days, I've been riding the Dukawey FUGL3 through quiet roads, forest paths, and lakeside routes here in Finland. During that time, I covered more than 100 kilometers in a variety of conditions, from smooth asphalt to gravel roads and everything in between. And after spending that much time with the bike, I think I finally have a clear answer to an important question. Can a reasonably priced electric bicycle actually deliver a premium riding experience? Because on paper, the Dukawey FUGL3 certainly looks promising. It comes with a 250-watt motor, a large battery, hydraulic disc brakes, front suspension, integrated lighting, and one feature that immediately caught my attention: the ability to switch between a torque sensor and a cadence sensor. That alone makes this bike stand out from many competitors in its price range. But specifications never tell the whole story. What really matters is how a bike feels once you leave the product page behind and start riding. And that's exactly what I wanted to find out. Before talking about performance, let's start with the first thing anyone notices: the design. I have to admit that the FUGL3 made a good first impression. The frame looks modern without trying too hard to look futuristic. The proportions feel balanced, the cables are neatly integrated, and the overall appearance is surprisingly clean. Some electric bicycles immediately reveal themselves as budget products. This one doesn't. Even after several days of use, I still found myself looking back at it after parking, and that's usually a good sign. By the way, in the E-Bike settings, you can set a password that will appear immediately after turning it on. If the password is entered incorrectly, all electronics will be locked, and you won't be able to ride the bike. The included paper user manual provides a step-by-step guide on how to do this. The manual is in English, but you can also download it in 6 other languages from the FUGL3 store website. I've left the link to the website in the description. I would also like to note that in Europe, the FUGL3 store is the sole and exclusive retailer of the Dukawey FUGL3.0 bicycle. Only in this store can you buy the original bike and receive technical support and an official warranty. But let's get back to its appearance. Of course, appearance is subjective, but I think most riders would agree that Dukawey did a good job here. The bike looks more expensive than its actual price would suggest. Moving beyond the design, the next thing I noticed was the riding position. Comfort plays a huge role in any bicycle review because a powerful motor means very little if you don't enjoy spending time in the saddle. Fortunately, the riding position here feels relaxed and natural. You're not aggressively leaning forward like on a road bike, but you're not completely upright either. The balance feels right. During longer rides around the lake and through nearby forest roads, I never felt uncomfortable. In fact, after several hours of riding, I found myself thinking less about the bike and more about the places I was exploring. And that's exactly what a comfortable bicycle should do. It should disappear beneath you and let you enjoy the ride. Now, let's talk about what makes this bike different: the dual sensor system. If you're new to electric bicycles, you may have heard the terms cadence sensor and torque sensor before, but understanding the difference is important because it completely changes how a bike feels on the road. A cadence sensor simply detects whether you're turning the pedals. Once it notices movement, the motor starts providing assistance. It doesn't really care how hard you're pedaling, only whether the pedals are moving. A torque sensor works differently. Instead of measuring pedal movement, it measures pedal pressure. The harder you push, the more assistance the motor provides. The result is a riding experience that feels much more natural, almost as if you've suddenly become stronger rather than being pushed forward by an electric motor. The interesting thing about the FUGL3 is that it allows you to experience both systems, and after spending time with each mode, I started to understand why some riders strongly prefer one over the other. In cadence mode, the bike feels effortless. You start pedaling and the motor quickly takes over much of the work. This is excellent for relaxed commuting, longer rides, and situations where you simply want the bike to do most of the heavy lifting. It's easy, it's comfortable, and it's very beginner-friendly. Torque mode creates a different experience. Suddenly, the bike feels more connected to your inputs. Acceleration becomes smoother. Power delivery feels more predictable. And climbing hills becomes surprisingly enjoyable. Instead of feeling like a passenger, you feel like an active part of the riding experience. Personally, after riding more than 100 kilometers, I found myself preferring torque mode most of the time. Not because cadence mode is bad, far from it, but because torque mode made the bike feel more like a bicycle and less like a small electric vehicle. And that's something many experienced riders will appreciate. The best part is that you don't have to choose one forever. The ability to switch between the two gives the FUGL3 a level of versatility that many competing bikes simply don't offer. As I continued riding through quiet roads and lakeside paths, another aspect of the bike started to stand out, the motor itself. And that's where things became even more interesting. The motor on the FUGL3 may not sound particularly exciting on paper. Like many e-bikes sold in Europe, it's rated at 250 watts. And if you've spent any time researching electric bicycles, you've probably seen that number countless times before. But as every experienced rider knows, the wattage figure alone tells only a small part of the story. What really matters is how the motor delivers its power. And in everyday riding, the FUGL3 performs surprisingly well. Power delivery feels smooth and controlled, rather than aggressive or unpredictable. The assistance builds naturally, especially when using torque sensor mode, and that creates a riding experience that feels refined rather than artificial. Whether I was cruising along quiet roads near the lake or accelerating away from a junction, the motor never felt abrupt. Instead, it blended into the ride in a way that made the bicycle feel like an extension of my own effort. One thing I particularly appreciated was how quiet the system remained. Some e-bikes constantly remind you that a motor is working beneath you. This one tends to stay in the background. You hear it occasionally, especially during harder acceleration or when climbing, but for the most part, the riding experience remains peaceful. And when you're riding through nature, that's something you quickly learn to appreciate. You hear the wind. You hear the tires rolling across different surfaces. You hear the environment around you. The bike simply helps you move through it. Of course, sooner or later, every e-bike faces the same challenge: hills. Even though Finland isn't famous for dramatic mountain roads, there are still plenty of steep sections, rolling terrain, and short climbs that reveal a lot about a bike's capabilities. Over the course of more than 100 kilometers, I deliberately looked for those situations, not because I expected the FUGL3 to struggle, but because hills are often where the difference between an average e-bike and a genuinely enjoyable one becomes obvious. The good news is that the bike handled climbs confidently. On moderate hills, the motor provides enough assistance that maintaining momentum never becomes a problem. You still feel involved in the ride, especially in torque mode, but the effort required is dramatically reduced. Longer climbs feel manageable. Short, steeper sections become much less intimidating. And perhaps most importantly, the bike never gave me the feeling that it was operating at its limits. Everything felt relaxed and controlled. That confidence encourages you to explore routes you might otherwise avoid. And that's one of the biggest advantages of electric bicycles in general. They make the world feel smaller. Suddenly, distances seem shorter, hills seem lower, and destinations feel easier to reach. Beyond the motor, comfort is another area where the FUGL3 impressed me. Many bicycles feel comfortable during the first 10 minutes. Far fewer remain comfortable after several hours. That's where the real test begins. Throughout my rides, the combination of riding position, suspension, and tire volume created a very pleasant overall experience. The front suspension does exactly what most riders need it to do. It smooths out imperfections in the road. It reduces vibrations, and it takes the edge off rough surfaces. This isn't a mountain bike designed for aggressive off-road riding. That's not its purpose. Instead, the suspension focuses on improving comfort during everyday use, and in that role, it performs well. The benefit becomes particularly noticeable on gravel roads. Small bumps disappear, rough patches become easier to handle, and the entire bike feels more composed. The tires contribute significantly as well. Their width adds confidence, stability, and comfort, especially when transitioning between different surfaces. As a result, the bike never felt nervous or unstable. Whether riding on pavement, gravel, or compact dirt paths, the handling remained predictable. For many riders, that's exactly what they're looking for. Not maximum speed, not extreme performance, simply confidence. A bike that feels trustworthy, a bike that encourages longer rides, and a bike that doesn't punish you for taking the scenic route. Speaking of confidence, we should talk about braking performance, because speed is only enjoyable when you can control it. The FUGL3 comes equipped with hydraulic disc brakes, and after spending considerable time riding the bike, I can say that this is absolutely the right choice. Braking feels powerful without being overly sensitive. The controls are easy to modulate, and stopping distances feel reassuringly short. More importantly, the brakes inspire confidence. That may sound like a small detail, but it has a huge impact on the overall riding experience. When you trust your brakes, you ride differently. You feel more relaxed. You focus less on potential problems and more on enjoying the ride. During my testing, the braking performance remained consistent across different conditions. Whether slowing down gently or coming to a more rapid stop, the system behaved predictably, and predictable is exactly what you want. Now, let's move on to another topic that every potential buyer wants to know about. Battery life. This is one of the first questions people ask whenever an e-bike is discussed. How far can it go? The honest answer, of course, depends on many factors. Terrain, wind, rider weight, assistance level, tire pressure, and even temperature. A single charge lasted me for 80 kilometers, with 1 bar still remaining on the battery indicator. And if you ride in eco mode, I think you could easily cover over 100 kilometers. This is an excellent result. What I can say is that after covering more than 100 kilometers, I never found myself worrying about battery anxiety. The battery capacity feels well matched to the character of the bike. For typical recreational rides, commuting, and weekend adventures, there's enough capacity here to inspire confidence. Instead of constantly checking the display and calculating remaining range, I found myself focusing on the ride itself. And that's exactly how it should be. A good battery disappears into the background. You stop thinking about it. You simply ride. For many riders, that peace of mind is every bit as important as the actual range figure, because confidence changes the way you use a bicycle. You take the longer route home. You explore unfamiliar roads. You continue riding when you otherwise might turn around. And that's where electric bicycles become truly enjoyable. Not because they make riding easier, but because they encourage you to ride more often. You simply charge your e-bike battery for 4 to 5 hours in the evening, and in the morning, you are ready for a new journey. The battery itself is very easy to remove using the included key. A charger for this battery is also included, and now is the perfect time to talk about the additional accessories that come in the box. And this is where Dukawey pleasantly surprised us. Look at how many useful things they give as a gift. Here, you have a set of keys tools for assembling the bike, a mini pump, a charger, an e-bike steel lock, and a bicycle bell. By the way, the bike also features an electronic bell, and it is very loud. Just listen to it. By this point in my testing, the FUGL3 had already proven itself in several important areas. The motor felt smooth, the sensor system added genuine versatility, the suspension improved comfort, the brakes inspired confidence, and the battery never became a concern. But after more than 100 kilometers, a few smaller details also started to reveal themselves. Some were positive surprises. One of them, however, became the only real criticism I have of this bike. And that's what we'll talk about next. After spending more than 100 kilometers on the Dukawey FUGL3, I started paying less attention to the major features and more attention to the smaller details. And surprisingly, many of those details turned out to be positive. The overall build quality feels solid. Nothing rattles, nothing feels loose, and throughout my testing, the bike gave the impression of being well assembled. That's something that shouldn't be taken for granted in this price category. Many affordable e-bikes focus heavily on specifications while cutting corners elsewhere. Fortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case here. The frame feels sturdy, the controls feel intuitive, and everything works together in a way that feels coherent. You don't get the impression that random components were simply combined to create a specification sheet. Instead, the bike feels like a complete product, and that's an important distinction. Another area I appreciated was the display and overall user experience. Everything is straightforward. You don't need to spend hours reading manuals or navigating complicated menus. Within minutes, most riders will understand how the bike operates, and that's exactly how it should be. Technology should make riding easier, not more complicated. The assistance levels are easy to access. The information is easy to read. And after a few rides, interacting with the bike becomes second nature. The more time I spent with the FUGL3, the more I realized that its greatest strength isn't a single feature, it's balance. Many e-bikes have one standout characteristic. Some focus almost entirely on power, others focus on battery capacity, others focus on comfort. The FUGL3 doesn't dominate any single category. Instead, it performs well across all of them. The motor is strong enough. The battery is large enough. The suspension is comfortable. The brakes are reliable. And the dual sensor system genuinely adds flexibility. The result is a bicycle that feels versatile, a bicycle that can adapt to different riders and different situations. And that's probably why I enjoyed riding it so much. Some bikes are impressive for 5 minutes. Others become enjoyable over time. The FUGL3 belongs to the second category. The more I rode it, the more I appreciated what it was designed to do. Of course, no product is perfect, and if I'm going to spend 20 minutes talking about a bicycle, I think it's only fair to mention the things that could be improved. Fortunately, my list is very short. In fact, there is really only one issue that consistently stood out during my testing: the kickstand. Now, this might sound like a minor complaint, and honestly, it is, but it's also the only thing I repeatedly noticed. The foot of the kickstand is surprisingly narrow and quite sharp. On hard surfaces, this isn't a problem. Parking on asphalt or concrete works perfectly well. However, when I stopped on softer ground, especially sand or loose soil, the kickstand tended to sink into the surface. As a result, the bike occasionally became less stable when parked. It's not a major flaw. It's certainly not something that would stop me from recommending the bike. But it is one area where a slightly wider foot or a different design could improve everyday usability. The reason I'm mentioning it is simple. After more than 100 kilometers, I honestly struggled to find anything more significant to criticize, and in many ways, that's a compliment, because it means the important parts were done right. The riding experience was enjoyable. The motor performed well. The brakes inspired confidence, the battery never caused concern, and the bike consistently delivered exactly what I expected it to deliver. So, who is this bike actually for? In my opinion, the FUGL3 makes the most sense for riders looking for a comfortable and versatile electric bicycle that can handle a variety of situations. Maybe you're commuting, maybe you're exploring countryside roads on weekends. Maybe you're looking for a practical alternative to a car for shorter trips. Or maybe you simply want an e-bike that feels natural to ride without spending a fortune. If that's what you're looking for, this bike deserves serious consideration. The dual sensor system alone makes it stand out from many competitors. Being able to choose between a relaxed, cadence-based experience and a more natural torque-based experience gives the bike a flexibility that I genuinely appreciated throughout my testing. And while I initially thought it would be more of a marketing feature than a practical one, I ended up using it far more often than expected. Sometimes I wanted the effortless feeling of cadence mode. Sometimes I preferred the responsiveness of torque mode. Having both options available turned out to be surprisingly useful. Looking back at all the footage from the past few days, I think one thing becomes clear. Most of my favorite moments had very little to do with specifications. They weren't about motor power, they weren't about battery capacity, and they weren't about technical features. The moments I remember most were the rides themselves. Quiet roads, forest paths, open views across the water, the feeling of simply continuing forward without worrying about distance or effort, and ultimately, that's what a good e-bike should do. It shouldn't constantly remind you of its technology. It should encourage you to go further, to explore more, and to spend more time riding. After more than 100 kilometers, I can confidently say that the Dukawey FUGL3 achieved exactly that. It's comfortable, it's practical, it's enjoyable to ride, and perhaps most importantly, it never stopped making me want to take one more ride. And honestly, that's probably the highest compliment I can give any bicycle. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next review.